The sky was bleeding fire the day Naira fell from grace. They didn't call it exile. Not exactly. To the high scholars of the Aetherian Council, language was delicate, a scalpel, not a hammer. Relocation for civic disharmony, they said. Environmental reassignment pending psychospiritual reassessment. Naira knew what it really meant. Banishment. Punishment. Despite the language, the result was the same. She stood alone, wrists bound by thread-like bands, as the council's pale marble chamber echoed with the weight of silent judgment. The verdict was final. Irreversible. Already, the drop vessel was being prepped in the bay below. She didn't resist. What would have been the point? Naira had always known she would not die a loyal daughter of Etheria. Not after what she'd done. Not after who she'd saved. They didn't bother escorting her out with honor. The guards looked past her like she was already dust. Her colleagues, people who'd once called her a visionary in the field of biocultural restoration, stood with mouths tight and eyes flat. None of them met her gaze. Only High Scholar Setren, her former mentor, approached. He looked older than she remembered. Thinner. Diminished. "You should have let them die," he said, and his voice was not cruel, just tired. Naira looked out across the glass dome, the horizon split by the light of twin moons. "Maybe. But I didn't." Setren said nothing. Just watched her go. The drop vessel was little more than a sealed metal pod, designed for one-way travel, rigged with obsolete guidance tech and minimal life support. Standard protocol for environmental expulsion. Naira sat against the curved wall, unbound now, fingers numb. The engines shuddered to life. The launch sequence began. Etheria, with its crystalline spires and violet rivers, shrank behind her like a dream dissolving in sleep. Senkar. A dead moon. A fractured world. Once rich in atmospheric diversity and crystalline resources, it had long since been stripped, mined, and discarded by the Council. Now it was home to storms that could shear metal, terrain that shifted weakly, and air so thin that every breath felt like swallowing knives. They didn't expect her to last a week. They underestimated her. The pod struck the surface hard, skidding along a basin of oxidized stone and spewing dust in long, angry trails. Naira's vision went black with the impact. When she came to, her shoulder was dislocated, and the emergency supply cache had burst open, spilling essentials into the dirt. She hissed through her teeth as she yanked her arm back into place. Pain blurred her thoughts, but survival did not wait for lucidity. She moved. Quickly. Efficiently. Salvaging the ration packs. Sealing the rupture in her breather pack. Using shards of insulation foam to brace the fractures in the hull. When the twin suns began to set, the temperature dropped like a hammer. She built a fire from broken hull wiring and thermogel packs, huddling behind the wreck's remains as the night howled around her. Static winds screamed through the gorges, and sulfur blooms released spores that sparked on contact with open air. She didn't sleep. By morning, she had mapped the terrain to the north and found a hollow beneath a cluster of sun-shielded rock arches. Not shelter, exactly, but not death, either. And on Senkar, that was enough. The days became a rhythm. Wake before the second sun. Repair the breather unit. Hunt for cave fungi that grew along fissures where heat still rose from below. Collect vapor from the air and condense it into drinkable water. Avoid the devourers, lithe, boneless predators that moved like smoke and shrieked like children when they starved. She named them in her head. Not from sentiment, but control. A thing named was a thing she could confront. At night, when the temperature dipped to lethal lows, she curled beneath scavenged plating and whispered words to no one. "You're still here," she told herself. "You're still breathing. Keep breathing." A month passed. Maybe two. Time bent on Senkar. It didn't move linearly, it throbbed, like a wound. Naira changed, too. Her skin, once soft violet, almost luminous, took on a hardened, sallow tone. Her fingers calloused. Her body adapted, clinging to what little warmth it could. She built better traps. Stronger filters. A crude blade from impact shards and rock fangs. But even as her body hardened, her heart began to fray. Because survival was lonely. And loneliness on Sankar was louder than the storms. The crash didn't come with warning. Nothing did on this world. One morning, she was picking through a mineral shelf, harvesting salt crystals she could dissolve for electrolytes, when the sky exploded. A roar split the air like the scream of a god. Above her, a trail of fire slashed across the horizon, arcing, burning, spinning. And then it hit. Not far. Maybe 2 ridgelines east. The quake followed seconds later. A tremor that cracked the earth beneath her feet and sent boulders clattering like dice. Naira dropped her tools and ran. She found the wreck nestled in a canyon fold, half buried in slag and ash. It was a ship, sleek, smaller than the transport pods used by the council. Not Etherean. Not from her people. Foreign. Its hull was fractured open like a ribcage. Smoke poured from ruptured vents. Lights flickered inside, dying, pulsing. She moved cautiously, blade drawn, senses screaming. It was foolish. Reckless. But she couldn't walk away. Not again. The figure lay slumped near the main console, half pinned beneath a snapped support beam. His body was bleeding. Not violet like hers. Red. Naira stared. A human? Impossible. No humans had been this far from the central trade rings in over a century. Most thought this side of the system was cursed, marked by magnetic storms and diplomatic ruins. But he was unmistakably human. His chest rose and fell in ragged shudders. His arm bent wrong. His leg. Gods. She looked away. "You're alive," she murmured, already moving. "You're actually alive." He groaned. Not words. Just sound. She dug her shoulders under the support beam and lifted with everything she had. Her joints screamed. Her lungs burned. When the metal finally shifted, he cried out in a language she didn't recognize, but the tone was pure, primal pain. She dragged him free. Getting him back to her shelter was the hardest thing she'd ever done. She fashioned a sled from ship plating, secured him with torn wiring, and pulled, inch by inch, across the broken terrain. He was heavy. His blood left a trail. And more than once, she saw shadows moving in the cliffs above. But she didn't stop. Even when her arms went numb. Even when her own blood slicked her palms from old cuts reopening. He had come from the stars. She couldn't let him die here. The fever hit on the second night. He thrashed. Cried out in that strange tongue. Muttered names she didn't know. Naira cooled his skin with mineral water, fed him broth made from boiled fungi, cleaned his wounds with ragged cloth and ancient salves. When he quieted, sometimes, he looked at her with wide green eyes, like he was seeing her for the first time. Sometimes, he smiled. And sometimes, he just reached for her hand. Communication was a slow, aching thing. He, Silas, she learned, could point. Gesture. Mimic, he tapped his chest and said his name. Silas. She did the same. Naira. He smiled. Repeated it. Nai, R.A. The way he said it made her stomach tighten. Like her name had never meant anything before, and now it did. They built a language of glances. Of hand signals. Of soft touches and muttered sounds. He taught her the word for sun, she taught him the sign for storm. When he was strong enough to sit, they began to work together. He was good with machines. Even wounded, he had a way of coaxing life from dead metal. He repaired her breather unit, added insulation to their shelter, even rewired the light rods she'd salvaged into a working heater. "Engineer," he said once, pointing to himself, then miming a circuit. She raised an eyebrow. "Clever human." He grinned. "Very." They didn't talk about the world outside. Not where he came from. Not where she'd been. Only here. Only now. Weeks passed. Silas learned the terrain faster than she expected. With her help, he built a crutch from carbon struts and learned to walk again, slow, halting steps at first, then with confidence. He was kind. Endlessly kind. He never mocked her scars. Never asked why her eyes went far away some nights. Never flinched when she woke screaming. He just held her. The first time she kissed him, it wasn't a kiss. It was a breath, shared, shaking, silent. He had just laughed at something stupid involving a spore fruit that exploded on contact, and she had turned toward him, breathless and warm, and he had just been there. Close. Present. Alive. And their lips met like it was always meant to happen. No fireworks. No heat. Just understanding. Just relief. They were two broken things, wrapped around each other for warmth. And in that warmth, something new began to grow. One night, as the storms sang outside, she curled against him and whispered the words she had never said aloud. "I was exiled for saving lives," she said. "They told me compassion was a defect. Weakness." Silas looked at her for a long time, eyes shining in the low light. "Compassion," he whispered, pulling her closer, "is strength." She didn't cry. But something in her heart melted. And she let herself believe, for the first time, that maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning. The first time Naira saw him walk without the crutch, she almost didn't recognize him. His movements were stiff, unbalanced, the muscles of his left leg not quite remembering how to carry him, but he moved forward anyway. Stubbornly. Quietly. She watched from the entrance of the cave as Silas paced back and forth, step by step, jaw set in that determined way of his. He didn't see her watching. He didn't do it for pride or praise. He did it for freedom. Naira's throat tightened, and she stepped back into the shadows, her heart strangely full. They had survived 2.5 moons together, and the rhythm of life had shifted around them. Silence wasn't empty anymore, it was shared. When they woke, it was side by side. When they worked, it was wordless harmony. When they slept, they tangled like roots, limbs warm against one another beneath salvaged thermal blankets. Yet for all their closeness, the questions remained. Who had sent him? How had he ended up here? And when would someone come looking? "You're different lately," Silas said one morning, while they filtered water through layers of moss and ion sand. Naira glanced up. "Different how?" He tapped his head. "Thinking more. Less talking." She smirked. "I didn't realize you considered me chatty." "You're chatty in your own way," he replied. "Your silences speak louder than most people's words." She looked away, but couldn't stop the smile. His English was still rough, but he was getting better, faster than she'd expected. "I'm thinking about the storm last night," she lied. "Liar," he said gently. Then, more softly, "You're thinking about them." Them. The Etherean Council. Her people. Her exile. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He just reached out, brushing his fingers against hers. "You don't have to tell me. Just, don't disappear inside it." Naira let herself lean into him. "I'm still here." Later that day, she found the notebook. It was crude, constructed from salvaged polymer sheets, bound together with synth thread from the wreck, but inside, Silas had been drawing. Maps. Plans. Designs for new shelters. Notes in both English and her own written language, which he had learned piecemeal from her labels and annotations. And something else, too. Her face. Sketched from memory, again and again. Soft lines. Wild hair. Sharp cheekbones and thoughtful eyes. Some were unfinished. Some showed her laughing. Others captured the silence between them, the way she looked just before sleep, or when firelight kissed her skin. She closed the notebook gently, heart aching. Then tucked it back where she'd found it. 3 days later, the ship appeared. It came without warning, cutting across the sky in a streak of silver. Too fast. Too clean. Naira froze, watching from the high ridge above their camp. Not a cargo hauler. Not a private explorer. Military. Not Etherean. Someone's looking for you, she said when she returned to Silas, and though her voice was steady, her hands trembled. He blinked. Me? That ship wasn't Etherean. The design was human. Your kind. Silas's brows furrowed. I didn't think they didn't know where we were. They do now. Silas paced. What would they want from you, she asked. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. I left something I wasn't supposed to take. He told her that night. About the project. About the seed vaults, experimental terraforming systems that could generate life on dead worlds. We weren't supposed to use them outside authorized colonies, he said, staring into the fire. But Sankar, when I saw it from orbit, I thought, what if we tried? What if we brought something back here? Naira understood. She had once believed the same thing. That dead things could grow again. That places abandoned by cruelty could become something new, if someone simply dared to care. And the council, she asked. Would they punish you? If I go back, yes. Probably. But they might not give me the chance. What do you mean? He looked at her, tired. Afraid. They might just erase the problem. Naira's heart clenched. Then we need to hide. But hiding didn't work. 2 days after the ship passed overhead, they found the drones. 3 of them, buzzing low over the ridge. Small, sleek, equipped with scanners. Naira watched as Silas crouched low, his hand tightening on the pulse knife he'd salvaged from his wreck. They're mapping, he muttered. They'll find the cave. Then we run. We don't run from everything, Silas. He looked at her, something fierce burning behind his eyes. I'm not running for me. They prepared fast. She packed the essentials, heat rods, food capsules, weapon tools, and most importantly, data. Every map they'd made. Every resource location. Even the pieces of Silas's seed vault design, encoded into her old interface slate. This can't die with us, she said. Even if we disappear, this can't. He nodded. We head west, she added. The crystalline tunnels. The ones near the sulfur chasm. I've charted them, no drones can get through that density. You sure? No, but it's the best chance we've got. He reached for her hand. Then let's go. The tunnels were a maze of light and death. Stalactites of razor glass hung above them. Sulfur vents hissed beneath their feet. The air shimmered with heat, and every breath burned. But Naira knew the paths. The balance points. The rock that would hold and the ones that would betray. Silas followed her without question. They moved for hours. Then days. They slept beneath luminous moss. Ate in silence. And when the quiet turned too thick, Silas reached for her. A touch. A word. A kiss. Like a lifeline. On the 4th night, they found an old observatory. Half buried in salt rock, long since abandoned by whatever survey crew once charted Sankar. Inside, power. Just enough. Silas set to work immediately, fingers moving over terminals like they were piano keys. Naira watched the lines of his jaw, the way he muttered in two languages at once, his brain turning like a storm. "What are you doing?" she asked eventually. "If they're going to find us," he said, "we make it hard. I'm masking our signal. Bouncing echoes off the outer ridge. Giving them ghosts to chase." She smiled. "Very clever human. Told you." That night, when she lay beside him on the old steel floor, wrapped in warmth and heartbeat, she whispered something she hadn't said before. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Silas didn't move. Didn't speak. Just pulled her closer. And kissed her like her words were holy. But peace never lasted long. It was Naira who saw the new figure first, high above the tunnel mouth, silhouetted against the bioluminescent rock. Not a drone. Not a soldier. A woman. Tall. Armored. Long, dark robes billowing around her. Ethereal. She stepped forward slowly, hands empty. "Naira," she said. Naira's pulse spiked. She knew that voice. "Ira. You're supposed to be dead." Naira's voice was low, wary. Not angry. Not surprised. Ira stood atop the narrow ridge, silhouetted against the pulsing blue glow of the crystalline tunnel system. Her posture was straight, unreadable. She didn't move. "You're supposed to be rotting in a field lab back on Etheria," Naira added, eyes sharp. "I'm not," Ira said evenly, "and neither are you." Silas stayed behind Naira, silent, watching with the cautious gaze of a man who understood danger when it wore a calm face. Ira slowly stepped forward. "May I come down?" Naira didn't answer. But she didn't say no. The fire crackled in the middle of the old observatory floor. They'd rebuilt it hastily after arriving, sealing cracks, restoring energy, reinforcing weak joints. It had become home in just 4 days. Now it felt suddenly exposed. Ira sat across from them, still dressed in the deep blue robes of the Etherian Council's elite researchers. Her braid was precise. Her boots were clean. She looked like the version of Naira that the Council had wanted to preserve. Naira, in contrast, wore ragged thermal wraps, a makeshift belt, and a tired look that didn't hide the questions behind her eyes. "Why are you here?" she asked. Ira's gaze flicked toward Silas, but returned to Naira. "Because they think you're a threat. And because I told them you weren't. You lied for me. I told them I needed to confirm your death with a bioscan. They didn't question it." Naira narrowed her eyes. "They sent you alone." Ira hesitated. "They didn't send me. You came on your own." "No," she said, glancing at Silas again. "I followed him." Silas stirred, his jaw tensing. "You were tracking me. Since your ship deviated near the rim. Once you entered restricted space, my access was revoked, but I watched anyway. And when I saw your signature go silent, I followed it to Sankar." Naira shifted. "Why?" Ira looked at her. And something passed between them, old, heavy, tangled in memory. "Because I couldn't let you die here alone." It had been 5 years since Naira had last seen Ira. They had shared a lab. Shared ideas. Shared, more. Ira had always been the quiet one. Meticulous. Thoughtful. Restrained in public, but intense in private. Naira had once called her the calm before every storm. Ira had responded with a kiss that felt like gravity. They hadn't ended. Not truly. They just drifted after Naira's defection. Ira had stopped writing. Stopped visiting. And Naira had assumed she'd chosen her place among the council over their bond. Now, looking at her in the firelight, Naira wasn't sure that had been true. "You're with him now?" Ira asked quietly, later, when Silas had stepped outside to inspect the signal mask. Naira didn't answer immediately. We saved each other. Ira nodded, slowly. You were always good at seeing the beauty in broken things. And you were always good at walking away before you risked becoming one of them. It wasn't said with cruelty. Just, truth. Ira flinched. They were going to kill you. You understand that, right? Yes. And you didn't fight. I didn't need to. I survived anyway. They fell into silence, the kind that felt like walking across ice, delicate, uncertain, ready to crack beneath the weight of everything left unsaid. He's not like us, Ira said finally. No, and that's why I love him. Ira looked up sharply. You love him? Naira didn't waver. Yes. Ira said nothing for a long time. Her hands were folded in her lap, her posture still perfect. But her eyes betrayed the war happening inside her. Does he love you? He hasn't said it. But I think so. Ira's jaw clenched. That's good. Later that night, Silas returned and said, she's hiding something. Naira didn't pretend not to know what he meant. She always has, she replied. In the following days, Ira stayed. Not as a threat. Not openly. But as a presence that reshaped everything. She was helpful, disarming traps, scanning weather patterns, recalibrating the filtration unit. She offered insight into mineral conversions, fungus detox cycles, even helped Silas refine his seed vault calibration. But she never slept near them. And when she looked at Naira, it was with a kind of ache that Silas noticed every time. You loved her, he said one night, after Ira had wandered off to gather moss samples. Yes. And you don't anymore. Naira hesitated. It's different now. It was beautiful. It ended. It broke me. And now, I think she wants to fix something she destroyed. But I'm not hers anymore. Silas nodded, slow and thoughtful. Does she know that? I think she's starting to. The breaking point came with the signal. Ira had been working alone in the observatory's upper console chamber when the terminal lit up. A beacon. Faint. Encrypted. From orbit. They found her standing frozen in front of it, staring as if into a mirror. What is that? Naira asked. Ira turned, her voice distant. The council. They found us? No, not yet. But they will. Silas stepped forward. Can we block it? We can try. But not forever. The more energy we use to shield our position, the easier it becomes to triangulate. So we run, Silas said. Ira shook her head. It won't matter. They'll scorch the tunnels if they think Naira's alive. Why? Because she's a reminder of something they can't control, mercy. The observatory felt smaller after that. Naira stood alone on the cliff that night, watching the twin moons hang low over the horizon. Ira found her there. Not saying anything at first. Then softly, you could leave with me. What? I still have access codes. Falsified logs. They think I'm investigating wreckage. Not you. Not him. You want me to run? I want to save your life. By giving up his? Ira winced. He wouldn't last in custody. They'd interrogate him. Dissect his designs. Maybe even dissect him. And you think they'll spare me if I walk into their arms? I think you'd have a better chance than he does. I'm not leaving him, Ira. Ira's voice cracked. What if he leaves you? He won't. How can you be sure? Naira turned to her, eyes fierce. Because he chose me when I had nothing. Because he didn't run when he saw the worst of this place. Because he loves me. He hasn't said it. He doesn't have to. I see it every time he looks at me. Ira went silent. Then finally whispered, I loved you, too. I know. Was it real? Yes. But it's over. That night, Naira climbed into bed beside Silas, curled against his side, and whispered, "If we have to run again, will you come with me?" Silas didn't open his eyes. He just said, "Anywhere." And this time, she said it first. "I love you." He smiled. "I was wondering when you'd say it." They found him beneath the salt crust, digging for silence. Zivan wasn't the kind of person you expected to meet on a dead moon like Sankar. For one, he talked too much. Second, he smiled too easily. Third, he should have been dead. Naira spotted the movement first, faint dust spiraling above the lower canyon. Not animal. Not drone. Something rhythmic. Deliberate. She and Silas tracked it for half a day, circling the chasm edge, blades drawn and breathing low. When they found him, he was knee-deep in ancient rock, covered in salt ash, scribbling onto a holopad with a cracked stylus. A scattering of tools, half-functional scanners, mineral analyzers, and what looked like a salvaged old imperial probe, surrounded him in a wide circle like a ritual. He didn't look up when Naira stepped into view. "You're either very lost or very stubborn," she said. He glanced up with a grin. "Neither," he replied. "I'm Zivan." They didn't trust him at first. How could they? Sankar didn't get tourists. But Zivan wasn't exactly threatening. A little too thin. Too sunburned. Too enthusiastic about rock layers and seismic fluctuations. "Rogue cartographer," he explained. "I used to chart unstable moons for interstellar jump routes. Now I just disappear into places no one else wants." "This place kills people," Silas said bluntly. "So do most," Zivan replied, unfazed. "At least this one has personality." Naira didn't laugh. But she didn't leave either. He noticed. He followed them back to the observatory, dragging a hoversled full of his equipment. Silas walked beside him, asking quiet questions. Naira trailed behind, always watching, always silent. Ira wasn't pleased. "We can't keep collecting strays," she snapped when they arrived. "He could help us," Silas said. "Or he could sell us." Zivan just raised his hands. "I'm not here to rat anyone out. I'm not loyal to the council or your enemies or whatever drama you've got going. I just want off this rock." "You crashed here?" Naira asked. Zivan hesitated. "Not exactly." "Then how did you get here?" He tapped the side of his nose. "Bad luck. Good secrets." They let him stay, with conditions. No access to terminal cores. No movement without someone present. No questions about their pasts. He agreed to all of it, smiling as if he'd already known the rules before arriving. "You don't trust easily," he said to Naira once, while repairing the observatory's external shield grid. "Trust is earned," she replied. "And what earns yours?" Not smiling so much. He laughed. Noted. Over the following days, Zivan integrated himself in small, disarming ways. He taught Silas how to stabilize long-range pulse relays. He helped Ira decode some of the encrypted council scans, and actually made her laugh, once, unexpectedly, at a joke about signal lag in bureaucrats. He even brought Naira a blackened stone fragment shaped like a tear. "I found it near the southern ridge," he said. "I don't know why, but it reminded me of you." Naira didn't thank him. But she kept the stone. One night, around the fire, Zivan told them the truth. Or at least a version of it. "I used to work for the Galactic Mapping Consortium," he said. "Made a living turning unexplored systems into profit lines. Until I stopped selling what I found." "Why?" Ira asked. "Because I started caring about what was already there." Naira met his eyes. He looked away first. "So I went dark. Disappeared. And ended up here. Why Sankar? Silas asked. Because no one looks for you in hell. The next morning, Zivan found Naira on the observatory roof, watching the cloud line. You don't sleep much, he said, settling beside her. Neither do you. I sleep better now. You talk too much. And you listen too hard. She turned to him slowly. What do you want, Zivan? What everyone wants, he said. A way out. You said you didn't crash. I didn't. Then you have a ship. I had a ship. Buried it to avoid a beacon ping. Now it needs power. Repairs. Maybe help flying it through storm bands that eat comms like sugar. Naira frowned. You came here on purpose. Just to hide? To hide, and maybe to find something worth helping. And did you? He looked at her. I think so. That night, the storms returned. A wall of wind and static that hammered the observatory like a siege. They sealed the doors. Anchored the structure. Waited. Naira and Silas huddled together in the comms chamber, listening to the wind scream. He's dangerous, Naira said. So were you, Silas replied. He's clever. So am I. You trust him? Silas hesitated. I think he's running from something. Like we are. But I also think, he's not alone anymore. And that might mean something. Naira looked at him, brow furrowed. He gave me a rock shaped like a teardrop. Silas chuckled. Romantic. Annoying. But you're still holding on to it. She glared. Go to sleep. When the storm passed, the real plan began. Zivan laid it out over a table of holographic maps and projection trails. We use my ship. Old scavenger model. Low signature. High speed. It can punch through the upper storm belt if we boost the core with something bigger than my scraps. Like what? Silas asked. Like your seed vault. Silas's jaw tightened. You want to gut it? No, just link the energy feed long enough for one jump. Naira crossed her arms. And what happens to Sankar? Zivan shrugged. It dies slower. Maybe someone else comes after and finishes what you started. And if the council is waiting beyond orbit? Ira asked. Zivan pointed at her. Then we don't go up. We don't. We go sideways. Slingshot through the field, catch the gravity arc, and shoot through a navigation tear I've been mapping for 3 months. That's suicide, Ira said. No, Zivan replied. It's escape. They debated for hours. But in the end, they agreed. Because the only other option was staying. And they all knew how that story ended. The next 5 days were a flurry of movement. Silas and Zivan rewired the observatory core. Naira and Ira mapped the vault integration. They worked like people who knew the clock was ticking. Who knew the sky could fall any moment. The night before the escape, Naira stood with Silas at the edge of the canyon. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. You're quiet again, he murmured. I'm thinking. Dangerous habit. She smiled. Do you ever wish we'd met somewhere else? No, he said, resting his forehead against hers. I only care that we met. Even if we die tomorrow. Especially if we die tomorrow. She touched his cheek. I love you. He didn't say it this time. He just kissed her so deeply it burned the fear out of her lungs.